Life has a way of surprising us with moments that shake us at our core. You've probably had that experience. You walk into a room and everything feels off. The vibe is different. The energy is low or tense. People are avoiding eye contact, or they're giving you those quick, polite smiles that don't quite reach their eyes. It's as if they're acknowledging your presence, but barely. And then, it hits you. You start to wonder, what did I do wrong? Maybe it's something about the way you're showing up. Something about your behavior, your actions, your very presence in that moment is causing people to look at you differently. The feeling that people are quietly judging you, looking down on you without saying anything aloud, is unsettling. But here's the kicker. Most of the time, it's not about who you are at your core. It's about the habits you're carrying with you, the unconscious behaviors that might be pushing people away without you even realizing it. I've been there too. I've been in situations where I didn't understand why people were treating me a certain way. It wasn't until I became more self-aware that I realized it wasn't about them, it was about me. I was stuck in patterns that made me my own worst enemy. And as the Stoics teach us, that's where change begins, with self-awareness. It's not about chasing perfection or trying to become flawless overnight. It's about recognizing the habits that are holding you back, the ones that are damaging your relationships, your reputation, and ultimately, your sense of peace. Once you recognize them, you can begin to break free and live more intentionally. Today, I want to take you through 7 habits that might be sabotaging your relationships and your reputation. Habits that you may not even realize you're carrying. And more importantly, I'll show you how Stoic philosophy can help you break free from them. But before we dive in, if you find this content valuable, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to like this video, hit the subscribe button, and share it with someone who could benefit from these insights. Also, feel free to leave a comment below. Your engagement helps this community grow, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on these ideas. Now, let's get into it. Trust me, what you're about to learn could change not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. 1. Gossip, a double-edged sword. Let's start with one of the most common habits that can quietly sabotage your relationships: gossip. We've all been guilty of it at some point, haven't we? It's almost like it's part of human nature. The urge to share the latest scoop or talk about someone else's drama can feel so innocent, even fun. Who doesn't like feeling like they're part of the in crowd, right? Gossip has this way of making us feel connected, like we belong to a group that's privy to information others aren't. It gives us a sense of bonding with others, but here's the hard truth. Gossip is like a double-edged sword. Sure, you might feel that brief sense of connection in the moment, but every time you share someone else's business, you're eroding trust. The people around you start to wonder, if they're talking about someone else like this, what are they saying about me when I'm not around? This is where the real damage begins. Gossip creates a ripple effect of distrust. No one is going to open up to you or share their deeper thoughts if they think you'll spread it around the moment they leave the room. Gossip doesn't build bridges, it builds walls. And the more you engage in it, the more people pull back from you. I used to think that gossiping made me more relatable, like it was a way to break the ice and get people to like me. But the reality was the opposite. My relationships remained shallow because no one trusted me enough to go deeper. People were always on guard, unsure if they could truly confide in me. This is where Stoic philosophy comes in with a powerful lesson. The Stoics believed that focusing on what's outside of our control, like the actions or lives of others, was a waste of time and mental energy. Gossip is the exact opposite of that principle. It's investing energy in things we can't control. Instead of gossiping about others, the Stoics would say that we should focus on what's within our control, our own actions, our own words, and how we show up in the world. Gossip is not just harmful to others, It lowers your own value. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Instead of engaging in conversations that bring others down, we should be using that energy to elevate ourselves. And here's another truth. When you gossip, it's often a way to avoid looking at your own flaws. It's easier to point out what someone else is doing wrong than it is to sit with the discomfort of your own imperfections. But Stoicism challenges us to stop avoiding our own reflection. Instead of talking about what someone else needs to fix, ask yourself, what can I improve in my own life? That shift in focus can be life-changing. If you find yourself in a group where gossiping is the norm, it takes real strength to step away from it. And guess what? That's where real respect comes in. When you're the person who says, "I'm not going to talk about others like that," people notice. They may not say it aloud, but they'll respect you for it. You'll start building a reputation as someone who can be trusted, someone who focuses on what really matters. And that, my friends, is a powerful way to live. So, next time you feel the urge to engage in gossip, pause. Remember that it's a choice. You can either jump into the drama and lower the trust others have in you, or you can take the Stoic path. Stay quiet and focus on what's within your control. You'll be surprised at how much more peaceful life becomes when you stop worrying about what everyone else is doing and start focusing on becoming the best version of yourself. Trust me, the respect you'll gain from that is far more rewarding than any temporary thrill you get from gossip. 2. Passive aggression, the silent saboteur. Let's move on to another habit that can wreak havoc on your relationships: passive aggression. We've all done it at some point, right? It's that classic "I'm fine" response when you're clearly not fine. Or when someone asks you to do something and you say, "Sure, whatever," but inside you're silently fuming. Passive aggression feels like a clever way to avoid direct confrontation. You think, why start an argument when I can just throw a little shade and make them feel bad without actually having to say what's really bothering me? It seems like the best of both worlds. You get to express your displeasure without the messiness of conflict. But here's the reality. Passive aggression is like trying to communicate through smoke signals in a thunderstorm. It doesn't work, and it just leaves everyone confused and frustrated. I used to think passive aggression was a smart move. I thought, why argue when I can be subtle and still get my point across? But here's the problem. No one is a mind reader. And even if they are, they're probably ignoring your passive-aggressive signals because they're too exhausting to deal with. Instead of resolving the issue, passive aggression creates a weird tension where nothing gets resolved and everyone walks away feeling worse. The Stoics have a very clear stance on this type of behavior. They valued honesty and direct communication. Marcus Aurelius talked about the importance of speaking the truth as it is, without hiding behind emotions. When you're passive-aggressive, you're doing the opposite. You're hiding what you really feel because you're afraid of conflict, afraid of being vulnerable, or afraid of saying what's really on your mind. But avoiding confrontation doesn't make the problem go away. It just makes it worse. Eventually, that bottled-up frustration is going to explode in a much uglier way. Being passive-aggressive is like playing emotional dodgeball. You think you're avoiding the problem by not being direct, but really, you're just hitting people with your frustration in ways they can't fix. It's like setting a trap that no one knows is there and then being mad when they don't fall into it. It's unfair to you, and it's unfair to the people around you. The worst part is, passive aggression makes you seem difficult to deal with. It turns what could be a simple conversation into a guessing game that no one wins. The Stoic approach here is simple but powerful. Communicate clearly and directly. Yes, it can be terrifying at first, especially if you're used to hiding behind passive aggression to avoid conflict. But trust me, being upfront about how you feel saves you so much emotional energy in the long run. It's about being vulnerable, yes, but it's also about being strong enough to say, "This is what's bothering me," without expecting someone else to figure it out for you. People respect honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. And more importantly, you start respecting yourself when you stop playing games and start having real conversations. I'll be honest, the first time I stopped being passive-aggressive and actually expressed my feelings, I was scared. I thought, what if the other person doesn't understand? What if they react badly? But you know what? The world didn't end. In fact, things got better. People responded with more respect, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. When you're clear about your feelings, people know where they stand with you, and that builds stronger, more authentic relationships. So, the next time you feel like sending a passive-aggressive text or giving someone the cold shoulder, ask yourself, do I want to keep playing this game, or do I want to grow up and handle this like an adult? Passive aggression keeps you stuck in a cycle of frustration and disappointment, while clear communication sets you free. Life gets so much easier when you stop expecting people to read your mind and start telling them what's really going on. It might be uncomfortable at first, but trust me, the respect you gain from being direct is worth it. 3. Excuse making, the roadblock to growth. We all know someone who always has an excuse for why things didn't go as planned. Maybe that person is you. Late to a meeting. Oh, the traffic was terrible. Missed a deadline. The Wi-Fi went down. Didn't finish a project. No one told me the due date. Making excuses feels like a way to protect yourself from criticism, doesn't it? It's a way to avoid taking the blame. But here's the thing. When you're always making excuses, you're not avoiding responsibility. You're avoiding growth. Excuses may seem like an easy way to sidestep the consequences of your actions, but they're doing you more harm than good. When you constantly deflect blame, people start to notice. Over time, you'll gain a reputation as someone who's unreliable, someone who can't be counted on. Worse yet, by making excuses, you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to learn from your mistakes. Every time you shift the blame onto something external, you miss out on the chance to reflect, improve, and become better. The Stoics had a powerful perspective on this. They believed that the only thing we truly have control over is ourselves, our actions, our reactions, and our decisions. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you constantly blame external factors for your shortcomings, whether it's traffic, technology, or other people, you're giving away your power. You're essentially telling yourself, "I'm not in control of my own life." But here's the truth. Taking responsibility for your actions, owning up to your mistakes, is one of the most empowering things you can do. Why? Because when you own it, you can fix it. You can change the outcome next time. I remember a time at work when I missed an important deadline. My first instinct was to whip out my usual list of excuses. Too much work, didn't get the email in time, technical difficulties, you name it. But then something clicked. I realized that none of those excuses would make the situation better. They wouldn't change the fact that I had dropped the ball. So I decided to try something different. Instead of hiding behind excuses, I went to my boss and said, "I messed up. I didn't manage my time well. I'll do better next time." And you know what? My boss didn't freak out. No one lost their mind. In fact, my boss respected me more for owning up to it. I felt a sense of relief for not hiding behind excuses, and that experience taught me a valuable lesson. Taking responsibility isn't about admitting defeat. It's about taking control of your life. When you take responsibility for your actions, you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the driver of your own life. And here's the thing. No one expects you to be perfect. People just want you to be honest and accountable. When you can look at a situation and say, "Yeah, I could have done better," you're already on the path to growth. That's where real respect comes from, not just from others, but from yourself. One of the toughest lessons I've learned is that excuses don't protect you, they trap you. They keep you stuck in the same cycle of mediocrity, because if everything is always someone else's fault, then there's nothing for you to improve on, right? Wrong. When you stop making excuses and start taking responsibility, everything changes. You start seeing where you can do better. You start learning from your mistakes instead of running from them. And the people around you, they start trusting you more because they know you're someone who won't pass the blame when things go wrong. So, the next time you feel tempted to make an excuse, pause. Ask yourself, what part of this is within my control? You might be surprised at how much of it is. Own your mistakes, and you'll find that people respect you more, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Stoicism teaches us that life is about focusing on what we can control, and when it comes to responsibility, that's one of the most empowering lessons you can embrace. Remember, it's not about being right all the time. It's about owning when you're wrong and growing from it. That's where real strength comes from. 4. Playing the victim, the trap of helplessness. One of the sneakiest and most damaging habits we can fall into is playing the victim. It's easy to do. When things go wrong, it feels comforting to slip into that mindset of, why does this always happen to me? It's like believing the universe is out to get you, like you're the main character in some tragic story that just keeps getting rewritten in the worst possible way. In the moment, it feels good to think that way, to believe that you have no control over the unfortunate events happening to you. But here's the truth. Playing the victim is not only exhausting for the people around you, it's exhausting for you. And more than that, it's a trap. It keeps you stuck in the same cycle with no way out. When you play the victim, you're giving away your power. You're handing over control of your life to circumstances, to other people, to forces outside of your control. And while it may feel comforting to say, it's not my fault, in the long run, you're sabotaging yourself. The Stoics, on the other hand, teach us the exact opposite. They believed that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can always control how we respond to it. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And that's the key to breaking free from the victim mentality. When you play the victim, you're reacting to life as though you have no say in what happens next. But the truth is, you have more control than you think. Life will always throw curveballs. That's inevitable. What matters is how you choose to handle them. Are you going to sit back and say, "This is just my bad luck"? Or are you going to ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience?" Playing the victim often comes from a place of fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of owning up to your mistakes. It's easier to say, "This isn't my fault," than to look in the mirror and ask, "What could I have done differently?" But here's the thing. The moment you stop playing the victim is the moment things start to change. When you take ownership of your role in every situation, good or bad, you realize you have the power to change your life. And it's not just about how you feel internally. Playing the victim has a real impact on the people around you too. It's draining. No one wants to be around someone who's constantly in a state of poor me. At first, people might feel sympathy for you, but over time, that sympathy turns into frustration. Why? Because deep down, people know that you have the ability to take control of your life. Watching you not do it is frustrating for them because they see the potential in you that you're not tapping into. The Stoics would tell you that when you play the victim, you're missing out on an incredible opportunity for growth. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that life's challenges were actually chances to practice virtue. Instead of seeing setbacks as personal attacks, he saw them as opportunities to strengthen his character. What if, instead of asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" you asked, "How can this make me stronger?" That shift in mindset changes everything. Suddenly, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to grow, to become a better version of yourself. The Stoic approach is simple but powerful. Take ownership of your life. When you stop playing the victim, you start taking responsibility for what happens next. It's not about blaming yourself for everything that goes wrong, but about recognizing that you always have a choice in how you respond. That's where your power lies. When you stop waiting for the world to change and start changing yourself, amazing things happen. You start to feel less like life is happening to you and more like you're in control of your own destiny. So, the next time you catch yourself slipping into that victim mentality, pause. Ask yourself, am I really powerless here, or am I just afraid to take control? Shift your mindset from, why is this happening to me, to what can I do about it? When you stop playing the victim, you step into a position of strength. You take your power back. Life will still throw challenges your way, that's a given. But instead of being knocked down by them, you'll stand up taller, ready to face whatever comes next. That's the power of Stoicism, and that's the power of owning your life. Life has an uncanny way of shaking us, presenting challenges or subtle moments that leave us questioning our very presence, our behavior, and how others perceive us. Imagine walking into a room and immediately you sense something is off. The energy feels strange, the atmosphere dense with unspoken words or judgments. Maybe people are avoiding your eyes, or perhaps they're offering you those fleeting, polite smiles that don't quite reach their eyes, the ones that seem more like a formality than a genuine acknowledgement. It's as if they're aware of you, but only at the surface level. And then, slowly, it dawns on you. Something isn't right. You start to wonder, what did I do wrong? Could it be something about the way you are showing up? Or is it a deeper, more subtle issue related to your behavior or habits? Perhaps something you've unconsciously been doing that's pushing people away without your even realizing it. This realization can hit hard. It shakes you to your core. The feeling that people are quietly judging you without saying a word, forming conclusions about your worth or your actions, can be incredibly unsettling. But here's the important truth. More often than not, this isn't about your value as a person, nor is it an accurate reflection of who you are at your core. It's about the subtle habits you carry, the unconscious behaviors that you've cultivated over time. These are the things that can push others away or damage your reputation, often without your awareness. I know this because I've been there too. I've walked into those rooms, sensing that something was wrong, but not understanding why people seemed distant or different toward me. It wasn't until I took a long, hard look in the mirror and became more self-aware that I realized it wasn't about them at all. It was about me. I was carrying habits and patterns that, without even knowing it, were making me my own worst enemy. And that's where the wisdom of Stoicism comes in. The Stoics teach us that change begins within, with self-awareness. It's not about striving for perfection or trying to become flawless overnight. No, it's about recognizing those subtle habits that are holding you back, damaging your relationships, and robbing you of peace. Once you recognize them, you can start to free yourself from them, living more intentionally and authentically. 5. Procrastination. The thief of time and potential procrastination is one of those sneaky habits that we often don't think of as destructive, but it can be a silent killer of both time and potential. We tell ourselves, I'll do it tomorrow, or I work better under pressure, but deep down, we know that we're just delaying the inevitable. Procrastination is essentially a way of avoiding discomfort, the discomfort of starting something difficult, of facing a challenge head-on, or of committing to something that requires sustained effort. But here's the problem. Procrastination doesn't just delay tasks, it builds anxiety and guilt. Every time you put something off, it hangs over you like a dark cloud, sapping your energy and focus. And the more you procrastinate, the more overwhelming the task becomes. Before you know it, what started as a manageable task has turned into a mountain of stress and pressure. The Stoics had a very pragmatic view of time. They believed that time was our most precious resource, and that wasting it was one of the greatest mistakes we could make. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." When you procrastinate, you're not just putting off a task, you're wasting precious time that you could be using to grow, learn, and achieve your goals. Procrastination is often rooted in fear, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, or fear of the unknown. But Stoicism teaches us that the only way to overcome fear is to confront it head-on. The longer you avoid a task, the more power you give it over you. But when you take action, even if it's just a small step forward, you start to reclaim that power. The task becomes less daunting, and you start building momentum. If you struggle with procrastination, try this. The next time you're tempted to put something off, pause. Ask yourself, what am I really avoiding here? Is it the discomfort of starting? Is it the fear of not doing it perfectly? Whatever it is, acknowledge it, and then take one small step forward. Just one. You'll be surprised at how much lighter you feel once you've started. 6. Overthinking, the paralysis of analysis. Overthinking is a habit that can trap us in a cycle of indecision and doubt. We replay scenarios in our heads, analyze every possible outcome, and second-guess our choices to the point where we become paralyzed. Instead of taking action, we get stuck in a loop of what-ifs, fearing that if we don't make the perfect decision, everything will fall apart. The Stoics were masters of cutting through the noise of overthinking. They believed in focusing on what was within their control and letting go of everything else. Epictetus famously said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." When you overthink, you're often trying to control outcomes that are beyond your control. You're trying to predict the future, but the reality is that no amount of analysis will ever give you complete certainty. Overthinking can lead to missed opportunities and unnecessary stress. It can make simple decisions feel overwhelming, and it can rob you of the joy of the present moment. The Stoic solution to overthinking is simple. Focus on what you can control and take action. Let go of the need for certainty, because the truth is, life is full of uncertainty. The more you try to control it, the more anxious and stressed you become. If you find yourself trapped in a cycle of overthinking, try this. The next time you catch yourself spiraling, ask, what can I control in this situation? Once you've identified it, take action on that one thing. Let go of everything else. It's liberating to realize that you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to take the next step. 7. Perfectionism, the pursuit of the impossible. Perfectionism is often seen as a positive trait, a sign of high standards and ambition. But in reality, perfectionism can be incredibly damaging. It's the pursuit of an impossible ideal, one that leaves you constantly feeling like you're not good enough, no matter how much you achieve. Perfectionism can paralyze you, making you afraid to start anything because you're terrified of not doing it perfectly. The Stoics understood that perfection is an illusion. They believed in striving for excellence, but they also recognized that we are all flawed human beings, and that's okay. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, focus on doing your best with what you have, and let go of the need for perfection. Perfectionism often leads to procrastination, burnout, and frustration. It's a constant feeling of falling short, even when you're doing your best. But when you let go of the need for perfection, you free yourself to take action, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. Instead of striving for the impossible, focus on progress. Celebrate your efforts, and recognize that growth comes from the journey, not from reaching some unattainable ideal. 8. People-pleasing, the trap of losing yourself. People-pleasing is a habit that often stems from a desire to be liked, accepted, or valued by others. It manifests as constantly saying yes to things you don't really want to do, agreeing with opinions that don't resonate with your own, and bending over backward to accommodate others at the expense of your own needs and values. On the surface, it seems harmless. After all, what's wrong with making others happy? But the reality is, people-pleasing can be incredibly damaging, both to your sense of self and to your relationships. When you prioritize other people's needs and desires over your own, you start to lose sight of who you are. You become a reflection of what others expect, rather than standing firm in your own identity. Over time, this can lead to feelings of resentment, frustration, and burnout. You're constantly giving, constantly accommodating, and yet it never feels like enough. The worst part, people may not even appreciate your efforts, because when you're always available, always agreeable, your presence and your efforts can start to feel undervalued or taken for granted. The Stoics teach us that we must act with integrity, aligning our actions with our true nature and values, rather than seeking approval from others. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This is the essence of people-pleasing, placing others' opinions above your own well-being. Stoicism encourages us to let go of the need for external validation and focus instead on internal alignment. What matters most is that your actions reflect your values and that you are at peace with the decisions you make, regardless of whether they please everyone around you. If you find yourself constantly saying yes when you want to say no, it's time to reclaim your voice. People-pleasing might make you feel temporarily accepted, but in the long run, it erodes your authenticity. Start by practicing small acts of self-assertion. Say no when something doesn't align with your values, and trust that those who truly respect and care for you will understand. By standing up for yourself, you strengthen your sense of identity and build more genuine, respectful relationships. 9. Comparison, the thief of joy and contentment. We live in a world where we are constantly bombarded with images and stories of other people's lives, their successes, their accomplishments, their perfect moments. Social media has amplified this to an unprecedented degree, making it easy to fall into the trap of comparison. You see someone who seems to have it all together, a better job, a more fulfilling relationship, a more exciting life, and suddenly, your own accomplishments and experiences seem inadequate by comparison. This habit of comparing yourself to others can be incredibly destructive. It robs you of the ability to appreciate your own journey, your own progress, and your own unique path. Comparison is the thief of joy. When you focus on what others have or what they're doing, you lose sight of your own potential and the things that make your life meaningful. Instead of celebrating your own wins, you're fixated on someone else's highlight reel. The Stoics remind us that every individual's path is different, and what matters most is how we live our own lives, not how our lives stack up against someone else's. Epictetus once said, "Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourselves." This is the antidote to comparison, recognizing that true fulfillment comes from within, not from measuring your life against others. The problem with comparison is that it's an endless game. No matter how successful or accomplished you become, there will always be someone who seems to be doing better. This keeps you trapped in a cycle of discontent, always chasing after the next thing, always feeling like you're falling short. The Stoic approach is to shift your focus inward. Instead of asking, "How do I measure up to others?" ask, Am I living in alignment with my values? Am I making progress on my own journey? When you focus on your own growth and development, you free yourself from the anxiety and frustration that comparison breeds. If you catch yourself scrolling through social media or looking at someone else's life with envy, pause. Remind yourself that their path is not yours, and your path is not theirs. Celebrate your own progress, however small it may seem, and trust that you are exactly where you need to be on your own journey. True contentment comes from within, not from external comparisons. 10. Dwelling on the past, the weight of regret. Finally, one of the most common and destructive habits is dwelling on the past. We all have moments we wish we could change, decisions we regret, words we wish we could take back, opportunities we missed. It's easy to get caught in a loop of replaying those moments over and over in our minds, wondering how things could have turned out differently if only we had made a different choice. But dwelling on the past keeps you trapped in a cycle of regret and guilt. It prevents you from fully embracing the present and moving forward with your life. The Stoics were clear in their teachings that the past is beyond our control, and therefore it is futile to dwell on it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Forget everything else. Keep hold of this alone and remember it. Each of us lives only now, this brief instant. The rest has already been lived or is impossible to see." In other words, the past is gone. It cannot be changed or undone. What matters is how you live in this moment, how you respond to the present, and how you prepare for the future. When you dwell on the past, you give power to events that no longer have any relevance. You allow your past mistakes or regrets to define your present and future. But the truth is, the past does not determine your future unless you let it. The Stoic approach is to learn from the past, but not to live in it. Take the lessons from your mistakes and apply them to your present actions, but do not allow regret to hold you back. If you find yourself constantly thinking about past mistakes or missed opportunities, it's time to let go. Practice forgiveness, both for yourself and for others. Acknowledge what happened, learn from it, and then move on. The only moment that matters is the one you're living in right now, and by focusing on the present, you free yourself from the weight of the past. Conclusion: the power of Stoic transformation. Each of these habits, gossip, passive aggression, excuse-making, playing the victim, procrastination, overthinking, perfectionism, people-pleasing, comparison, and dwelling on the past, are subtle yet powerful ways we sabotage our own peace, our relationships, and our growth. They are habits that can easily take root in our lives without our even noticing, but once we become aware of them, we have the power to change. The wisdom of Stoicism offers a path out of these destructive cycles. It teaches us that while we cannot control external events, we can always control how we respond to them. We have the power to choose our actions, to align our behavior with our values, and to focus on what truly matters. Stoicism isn't about being perfect. It's about progress. It's about striving to live a life of integrity, self-awareness, and inner peace. If you've recognized any of these habits in your own life, don't be discouraged. The first step to change is awareness. Now that you're aware of these patterns, you can begin to make small shifts in your behavior, replacing these destructive habits with more empowering ones. It won't happen overnight, but with time, patience, and practice, you'll begin to see the transformation in how you relate to others, how you approach life's challenges, and most importantly, how you feel within yourself. So, take this as an invitation to reflect on your habits. What are you ready to let go of? What new practices can you adopt to align more closely with the Stoic principles of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance? Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress every day toward becoming the best version of yourself. If this video or article resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from these insights. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on which habit you're working on overcoming and how Stoicism has helped you on your journey. Remember, life is a process of continuous growth, and with the wisdom of Stoicism, you have the tools to navigate it with strength, clarity, and grace. Thank you for being a part of this journey towards self-improvement and inner peace. Stay strong, stay mindful, and keep striving for progress, not perfection. I'll see you in the next video or article.